Today's economy, you need two jobs just to afford breakfast. Filling up your tank? Might as well finance it. But there's some good news. Northwest Insurance Agency can actually save you some money. Auto, home, business, and more custom coverage without the custom price tag. Northwest Insurance. Protect more. Spend less.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the After Stangs Show, the first one of the 2025 season. I am Billy Embody. With me, Dean Ralsky, wrapping up SMU's 42-13 win over East Texas A&M Saturday night in Ford Stadium. And Dean, a sloppy yet dominant game for SMU. The game was never in doubt, but it was just felt disjointed a little bit for SMU, but they get out with a win. Now they can focus on Baylor at 11 a.m. next week.
Yeah, absolutely. I think among the SMU fan base, coaching staff, there are varying degrees of disappointment. But like you said, at the end of the day, it was a dominant victory. And to start with something off the field, as Coach Lashley mentioned, SMU smashed their single game student record attendance. So that's a positive. You saw some glimpses of some freshmen and what they can provide, but full focus is now getting ready for Baylor next week.
And that first drive, for the offense, you lose Jordan Hudson right out of the gate. It comes off the field, injury. Rhett Lashley said that x-rays are negative, both for Jordan Hudson and Alexander Kilgore, the linebacker, who got injured returning an interception on a crazy play for a touchdown. And those are two key starters. Those are two players that you're relying on. One of them, captain, and Alexander Kilgore, and kind of that leader of your defense, as Rhett Lashley called him in this post-game press conference. And those are two big pieces now that, Rhett Lashley's not going to rule them out tonight. They're going to, look for other, see kind of what the doctors say and things like that. But, both did not return, didn't look good. One on crutches, one in a sling. Doesn't look good for Baylor next week. I would think that's safe to say, but we'll see. It's fresh off of those. That is the biggest takeaway from this game. Those two injuries right there. You play a team like East Texas A&M who played hard, kind of gave you everything they could, but at the end of the day, you get two of your starters hurt, and that's really big.
And I think you saw, the difference in depth at those two positions. At wide receiver, you have the freshman that we've been talking about for months, and Jordan Hudson is a huge loss, of course, but you'd like to think that these freshmen can step up and do their best and perform at a high enough level. But at linebacker, you see these new faces that have come in, or really a lot of returning faces that are just now in bigger roles, especially when Kilgore goes down. And it is going to be a true test for them. Baylor, they've got a really big physical running back, a huge tight end that is very difficult to deal with. So they're going to have their hands full next week.
I think you look at this game and that first drive is a total microcosm of how the whole thing went. You lose Jordan Hudson, massive storyline there. Then I think Derek McFall maybe ripped off like a nice little run. And then you get the 63-yard bomb to Romello Brinson, who flips into the end zone, gets a flag for it, of course. And for those that don't know, Romello Brinson redshirted last year so he could come back and play this final season. And he said in the post-game press conference, not going to happen again, or, not going to do that and get flagged. And I got excited or whatever. And he waited a long time for a moment like that, with just his path to returning to play and things like that late in the season. So is what it is. But SMU also got flagged a good bit on penalties. So a couple holding calls on Savion Byrd that really set drives back, and that hurts. And that was, again, kind of even where the offensive line stays still and you think it's an offsides, they didn't have that one go their way. And so there was all these little things that kind of added up to make it look kind of disjointed and sloppy, but at the same time, they were up 21-0, 40-something seconds into the second quarter, and there was just no way that SMU was going to relinquish a lead like that.
Yeah, and it almost just felt like, it's not the exact analogy, but like death by 1,000 paper cuts, where there are just a bunch of small things, nothing major, aside from the injuries, but in
Yeah.
terms of playing on the field, the penalties were unfortunate, and some of the missed calls or wrong calls. Coach Lashley was very animated at certain points in this game. But one thing he did mention was that the team was not penalized in the second half. So that's something to watch for. Again, SMU was one of the more penalized teams last year, and they're going to have to play a little bit more discipline next week.
And, of course, the After Stangs Show presented by our friends at Northwest Insurance Agency, Mark Villasana. You heard it off the top. Make sure you reach out to them at Northwest Insurance Agency, nwagencies.com. Make sure you have them review your insurance policy, your plans, your coverage, and more, and they'll get you all set up in that regard. But also want to shout out our friends at Status Jet, of course, for supporting the On the Pony Express podcast. They are huge partners for us and are always taking care of Mustangs looking to travel on the road. Of course, Missouri State in 2 weeks. If you're looking for a special way to get up there, mention On the Pony Express when you reach out to statusjet.com and have them plan the trip for you, get up and back the same day. You don't have to do a hotel like my man Dean is. But for those of you who haven't reached out to them, just reach out and see. It's SMU owned, and of course they can hook you up with a world-class experience on that front. So we appreciate their support of the On the Pony Express podcast. And Dean, as we look at this game, I think we've got to spotlight the receiver position and kind of break that down a little bit more, because you see RJ Maryland get in there. You see Ymir Knight make his debut for SMU. Two dynamic players in that slot position that SMU uses in various ways. Both make an impact, both get some burn, but it's really the freshman, Jalen Cooper, who made his statement here early.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, kind of at that next drive, getting a couple of receptions back to back, I think it was, to start that drive. So, he's somebody who, for those that don't know, was a former 4-star prospect. SMU held off a late push from Notre Dame to keep him in this class. He was the most productive receiver over the last couple of years in Texas high school football, and maybe one other person, but I'm pretty sure is most productive. And all he does is run great routes and catches the football. And that's where I think, Kevin Jennings, if he can develop that type of a rapport with him right off the bat, that's going to be helpful. And we talked about this freshman class with Isaiah Robertson and Carterius Brown, both played tonight as well. They're maybe not all going to have to shoulder the load, but them along with Link Rhodes, now somebody has to step up. And tonight it was Jalen Cooper. He caught his first touchdown pass as a Mustang.
Yeah, and he looked really sharp. And one thing I want to add too is they did not utilize the tight end room a ton. And part of that is probably just because they're being vanilla. And I think this is where this tight end room now, I didn't think it would have to be this early, but can really cover some of these holes, because you've got two super talented tight ends and you lose a receiver. And so now when you go into these big games, can they take the pressure off of some of these freshman receivers? Because a lot's going to be expected of them. But again, also Ymir Knight as well wasn't heavily involved. Was the game plan to not show Baylor too much, to not show these teams of who they think can really stand out and make big plays? So we'll have to wait and see. But to your point, regardless of how SMU uses Ymir Knight and the two tight ends, you're going to need some receivers on the outside making some plays.
And Ymir Knight did have a couple of really nice punt returns. He had one that wasn't called back. I think that went for a good gain. The other one was going to be was a touchdown. He got a holding call on that one, and he, I think, got through like 4 or 5 tackles. I mean, we've talked about him. If you're a subscriber at ontheponyexpress.com, sign up for just $1. We talked about how dynamic Ymir Knight is going to be. I think I picked him as my offensive MVP. So we'll see kind of how the team maybe uses him a little bit differently in the coming weeks, get him more involved. But that is a tough cover for a lot of teams, and so there's so many options on this offense. Jordan Hudson was having such a great fall camp. He really looked like this was the year. So we'll see kind of where his injury is, but and then SMU gets a bunch of running backs involved, and at different points they flash. CJ Johnson scores a touchdown on a really nice run, and kind of gives you. I mean, if immediately everybody's kind of talking like, well, who looks like Brashard? Who's going to be Brashard? I would say CJ probably looks like that. Derek McFall showed a little bit of that. And then TJ Harden ran really hard. I thought all three running backs that played the majority of the game ran really hard. I don't think that there was any doubt. Like when we look at the pass running back room, and there's Brashard Smith, and then behind him there was Jalen Knight and LJ Johnson. There were, the times that it just like wasn't physical. And I felt like all three of those backs were physical. And, at times SMU's offense just ultimately kind of shot itself in the foot with some of those holds and wasn't able to make things happen. But I feel better about the run game tonight than maybe the offensive line showed, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense at all. But
yeah, absolutely. I think to your point, TJ Harden, you got what you expected out of him. He is the big physical running back who's going to fall forward and get those few yards. With CJ Johnson, you saw the explosiveness, right? So you kind of saw in glimpses of what these players can produce. It's can they do it on a consistent basis? But to your point about the offensive line, seems like maybe some room to improve there. And if they can, well, then you're looking at the run game being super successful in the future. And maybe it'll come down to that interior of the offensive line as well. Again, the holding calls really killed some drives as well early on. So,
yeah. And by the way, if you're looking to get into SMU's Ford Stadium next weekend, make sure you reach out and check out Game Time. And it's gametime.co is where you go, not gametime.com. It's gametime.co. But really, download the Game Time app and take the hassle out of buying tickets. All the fees are right there up front, so you don't have to guess at what the final number is going to be for your ticket cost. Game Time is the place where you can get your tickets and know exactly what you're getting. And that Game Time app gives you a little preview of your seat. And, I just use it all the time and just kind of get a feel for how tickets are selling and things like that. And friends are always asking me for tickets as if I work here, but I send them to Game Time. And when you use code ON3, gets you $20 off your first order. So make sure you go to the Game Time app, create an account. Terms do apply, but when you create that account and use the code ON3 on your first purchase, it gets you $20 off. So check out our new friends at Game Time. They're back, and we're looking forward to working with them on this season of college football. So huge partners for us there at Game Time, so we appreciate them. And speaking of a partnership, SMU's offensive line, they just need to band together a little bit more. Like the disjointedness on the offense. Kevin Jennings, I think, finished 21 or 22 of 30, 71 or 73% completion percentage, over 200 yards. He had a bad interception in the red zone that Rhett Lashley said was actually on him and the receiver for running a poor route. And the whole situation was just bad on both sides. But this offensive line just looked like they were obviously playing their first game together. But there's a lot to unpack with this offensive line. You have Savion Byrd and Zion Nelson playing a lot at left tackle. You had a bust at some point on the strip sack with either Josh Bates or running back not picking up a clear rusher. There were just things tonight that definitely got to be cleaned up on the offensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. And that left tackle spot's going to be interesting to see in practice for the limited time we're in there, just because you've got Savion Byrd, who his benefit for him is he's healthy. Right. And Zion Nelson goes down with a leg injury, it looked like, and we'll have to wait and see. I maybe should have asked about that in the press conference.
I think he's fine. Okay. He was standing there by himself, like fine. So I don't know if they were just being, we'll see.
Yeah. And then of course Andrew Chamblee, who's sort of the wild card. Can you rely on him? Yep. SMU has not been able to yet, but if you can, that'd be a big plus. And then at center, do they mix around the interior of the offensive line again? Of course, it was Nichols who was center in the spring. Now he's out at guard. So, those are questions that Coach Dush just needs to answer.
When you look at the defense, I felt like the defensive line, while it wasn't perfect, like very similar, I felt like if there was a comparison to the Nevada game, which I don't think this is a comparison, like SMU was trailing at Nevada. I mean, they were on the ropes. Come back, obviously they win it. Of course, that's an FBS team, not an FCS. But I think the gaps, and this is just us without watching film and having all the tape or whatever, but the gaps and kind of just the assignment football that SMU was so good at last year wasn't there tonight. Again, game one, new faces, some returners, but a lot of new faces. And there were times when East Texas A&M took advantage of it and executed on their end. But really athletically, I mean, I felt like the defense line checked the boxes, in particular getting after the quarterback. Like I think, and SMU didn't have Akil Washington, edge transfer from South Alabama tonight, but I felt like getting after the quarterback, who made some great plays tonight at times, that was what really impressed me. They've just got to get their gaps right, and they'll kind of figure that piece out. The big concern is, Alexander Kilgore goes down. You had Zakai Barker, you have Justin Medlock, Brandon Maiazono, Brandon Booker, all playing a bunch of snaps. I think their play needs to go up a notch overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at that defensive line, I actually was impressed with Wu Spencer a lot.
Yep.
He was getting in the backfield a lot. They probably faced a more mobile quarterback today than they do in Sawyer Robertson, because he really didn't run too much against Auburn.
Yeah.
So I think actually the East Texas A&M quarterback, Madonna, I think was his last name, was able to escape a handful of sacks and didn't make a ton of plays, but avoided sacks. So the defensive line got good pressure. But again, the defense these last couple of years really has been so good when the defensive line and linebacker room are really working together. And that was not the case tonight.
Yeah. And now the secondary wasn't perfect either. There were some opportunities that East Texas A&M certainly took advantage of in that regard. And, you had Ahmad Moses, who had the pick six on his end of things that really kind of, I think, settled things down for the most part and allowed SMU to kind of salt this thing away. And very shortly thereafter got starters out and things like that. But when you look at the secondary, I think the corner position, I thought Speedy Nettles had a good game. I'll be interested to see how he grades out. But you look at Deuce Harmon kind of struggling a little bit at times. Marcellus Barnes got in there at times and struggled. I didn't really see too much of Jalen Davis Robinson, so either that's a good thing or I'm not sure. But Isaiah Wacobia missed a key tackle that allowed a big gain for East Texas A&M. So just kind of little things here and there that speed of the game, first game. SMU, there's so many new faces on this team, but there's also a lot of vets, and in particular, the vets, they're in that secondary. There's newcomers at nickel with Lamadrick Spencer and Jaden Milner-Jones, and guys like that. Jaden Milner-Jones is back, but Marcellus Barnes played a good bit of football last year at Syracuse. He's here now. They didn't have to tackle much live in camp, and they really didn't, even though they did a little bit more than maybe they have in the past. It's nothing like getting into a game, and so the tackling will have to improve. I don't think they got called for PI or holding or anything like that. So good in that respect, but it did seem like at times there was some holes that East Texas A&M was able to expose. Yeah,
and of course part of that is just sharpness, and that can only come with more game time. SMU's not going to play a perfect game. Even if they won the game 70-0, there were going to be things that went wrong. So I just think part of that is, okay, now they've got a game under their belt as a team. It was their first time going out there as a team together. So I just think some people need to give SMU a little bit of grace, give them a week, and let's see how they come out against Baylor, who had plenty of question marks and things they need to figure out themselves. And by the way, so does every single team in the country.
Yeah.
No team played a perfect game this week. Now, there are teams that played really well, but there are question marks for every single program in the country this year.
Yeah, and I mean, it just speaks to the wide openness of college football. So, for SMU, they're going to be really, I think, getting right back to work here. They'll be back out on Sunday, getting out on the field and getting to work on Baylor, cleaning things up, of course, from this 42-13 win over East Texas A&M. But look, before we go, do want to remind you guys, of course, about our friends at the Thomas Auto Group. They take care of us, the Thomas Promise. Make sure you go to thomasautogroup.com and find out more about the Thomas Promise today. And when you mention on the Pony Express, you get a employee pricing on new and pre-owned vehicles. So make sure you visit our friends at the Thomas Auto Group today. It is late. It is now past 1 a.m. So we are going to let you guys go on this edition of the After Stangs Show. For Dean Ralsky, I'm Billy Embody. Check out our full coverage. We'll have a lot more breakdowns on grades, participation reports, as well as recruit reactions to this win for SMU as they kick off the season. And by the way, before we go, pregame was awesome.
Yeah.
They tweaked a couple things. James Prochet comes out there and does the TNT thing that they added and sets off the fireworks. SMU's hoping there's fireworks here, 11 a.m. Central next week against Baylor as the Mustangs take on one of their old Southwest Conference rivals. So this is a big week now for SMU. I'm sure they're glad to get this game gone and done and focus on what is really, every game is important, but what's really important is SMU coming out and beating Baylor. And so they've got their hands full, just like Baylor has their hands full getting ready for SMU after their game against Auburn. So lots to digest. We will break it all down for you at ontheponyexpress.com. So for Dean Ralsky, I'm Billy Embody. This has been a live After Stangs Show. We will catch you guys next time. And thanks for listening, everyone.